Hi again. By now, you're starting to get a feel for the different visual design principles that can help improve your mockups. Earlier, we explored the concepts of emphasis and hierarchy. In this video, I'll start out by explaining the basics of scale and proportion, which are two different but related ideas. Then, we'll go over how to apply scale and proportion to your mocks. Finally, we'll discuss how accessibility should be kept in mind for scale and proportion. Let's get started. First, let's define scale. Scale is a concept that's used to explain the size relationship between a given element and the other elements in the design. The most important elements in a design are bigger than the less important elements. So, why is scale important for UX design? Well, there are a few reasons. First, manipulating the size or scale of a single element, like a button, is a great technique for creating emphasis. To emphasize an element, you can use scale to make that element larger than the other elements around it. Think of how using a magnifying glass can instantly enlarge your view of an object. In the same way, creating variation in size of certain elements in your design can help you highlight specific areas. In addition, scale can show similarity and contrast between elements. If two elements are the same size, they are perceived as being equal or similar. However, if two elements have a large contrast in size, they are perceived as being different from one another. Lastly, scale can be used to communicate visual hierarchy. Earlier, you learned how hierarchy is used to communicate the order of importance for the information on a page. Scale helps to create visual hierarchy. For example, typography can be easily changed using scale to emphasize the content on a page in different ways. This image shows how different type scales can be used to create headlines. The most important headline, Headline 1, or H1, has the largest type scale and appears at the top of the scale table. H1 headings are usually used to convey the most important content. There are even websites where you can enter your base size of font, and the website will provide you with a type scale, suggesting sizes of font for more and less important information. Okay, now that you've been introduced to scale, let's discuss the concept of proportion. For UX designers, scale and proportion are very closely related ideas, but they're not exactly the same. Proportion is about the balance or harmony between elements that are scaled. In other words, proportion helps UX designers make sure the size relationship between elements makes sense. This means that the elements appear to be in balance with one another. If one element in your design increases in size, then the other elements should also increase in size at the same rate, in order to remain proportionate. Check out this row of icons from our Dogwalker app. These three icons have the same proportions. But imagine we increase the scale of the first icon. Notice how out of proportion they are now? So, how do we make sure the proportions in our designs are balanced? One way is to review the page after changing the scale of a particular element to make sure the overall balance of the design still seems correct. Another way to maintain consistent scale proportions is by including certain size specifications for a design in a design system. We'll discuss design systems in much more detail later on. Great! You're learning the basics of scale and proportion. But how do we apply these principles to our mockups? Let's revisit the Dogwalker app as an example. On this page of the app, the user has already selected the day and time their dog needs to be walked. Now, they need to select the dog walker. Notice how the images of the four dog walkers are the same scale? As we learned earlier, when elements, like these photos, are the same size, they are perceived as being equal or similar. In addition, there is balance or harmony between these elements, which means they are proportional. However, if we change the scale of the images of the dog walkers, they quickly fall out of proportion. If you're like me, looking at these different sizes of images might make you cringe. In addition, the different sizes place an emphasis on Michael's and Melissa's profiles because their images are larger than the others. Remember, if one element in your design increases in size, then the other elements should also increase in size at the same rate in order to remain proportionate. Awesome! You've learned about two more visual design principles, scale and proportion. Coming up, we'll go through the principles of unity and variety. Let's keep going.